What's up? Developers interested in chat. Cool. Well, thank you for having me. I'm more into just having a conversation here. I'm going to show about 5 experiences we've built over the last 4 to 5 years and kind of talk about what worked and what we fucked up. And I think it'd be kind of valuable because we've done a lot in this space since the beginning, and I think it can be hopefully helpful. But if you have a question or you have something you're like, I don't understand that, I think you're kind of full of shit. Like, all of AI is full of shit right now. So like, if we start there, I feel pretty good. I call AI EI, eventually intelligent. And I think as long as you have that lens, we can build good stuff if we're humble enough. So my name is Shane Mack. We just got acquired about a month ago by Conversational. So now I have a title that no one else knows what it means. But I'm excited more than ever about automation. And so I'm going to start with, we started about 5 years ago building just bots. We were actually the first bot to ever launch on Facebook Messenger. The Zuckerberg keynote with 1-800-Flowers was ours, that we built with Facebook in 2015, I believe. And I'll never forget the day. Talk about a crazy story of building with the platforms and everything's changing. No one knew anything about if we could actually do commerce on Messenger. We just got this call, make money go through Messenger. And we started building with 1-800-Flowers and the Facebook team to announce it. And for 2 months, we're building this bot-only, fully automated experience to do commerce, plugging in payments, making sure all the privacy stuff works. And I remember 48 hours before F8 2016, we get a call, and it was, hey, Zuckerberg wants to keynote 1-800-Flowers as the main thing. Do you think he'll care if the CEO of 1-800-Flowers says you'll never have to call a phone number again? I was like, I don't see why he'd care. It's only his whole brand. And luckily, the CEO of 1-800-Flowers was amazing. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds great. And then 10 minutes before David Marcus took the stage, the servers went down. Nothing was working. It was going to be the first live experience ever. They were going to demo it live. And I remember I'm sitting there next to the CEO, next to this guy named Tony Velato, who was the guy who called us to do 1-800-Flowers. And the integration to the live chat platform, which was an agent platform in Israel, went down because it was on their staging server. So basically, they're all sleeping. And they were getting ready to demo it live on stage, and I was like, none of this is going to work. Ultimately, they woke up. We delayed about 10 minutes. Somehow the Facebook developer servers came back on, and the first ever flowers were sold on Facebook Messenger and about 3 years ago today. And I think since then it's been a crazy ride of a lot of things happening. And specifically is, I think it's this combination of people and bots coming together in a single channel to deliver something that's great, so the consumer can actually get what they want. My future, I dream about messaging being the core channel that all relationships are for brands. Like, it's not an email anymore. Web isn't personalized. It's a bunch of pixels following you around. They don't even know your name. Like, that's why everyone's still trying to do personalization after 15 years. And like, the opportunity here is to bring people and bots together to truly make an experience that can get people exactly what they want. And so that's why I'm, pretty big on, it's not about just bots. It's not even about just humans. It's just the messaging interface is the most personal. And also the messaging interface is how you interact with your friends. And I think great brands in the future need to act like great friends. So with that, I'm going to do a couple kind of experiences we've built. So these are a few brands that we've powered. They use our platform. Like you said, we're one of those 200 platforms that are on the Facebook platform. We were one of them. We were one of the first. So this is an experience with Sephora. We were last year on stage, one of the first to demo AR inside of messaging. So you'll see you can actually have a conversation and say, I want to try on some makeup. You can use the AR to try on the makeup, and then it talks back to the conversation so that you can actually select it, and then all the items that you tried on your face are sitting in the cart. And then you can say, I want to actually book a makeover, and we've integrated to all of the Sephora booking systems. So at any store in the US, you can fully book a makeover, and type in your email, ties to the CRM, and without leaving messaging, you're able to try on makeup. I've tried on a lot of makeup in the last couple years. I really like the red winged. You're able to fully try on makeup, browse all the items on your face, buy them, and book an appointment, and leave store feedback, and talk to Sephora about anything you need. That is a full concierge. You could ask them anything. And I think that's why the seamless integration between the automation was great because it was frictionless, but if I had something that was very personal and it needed a person, being able to bring in a person at the right time and knowing when to hand off to that person is critical to building great conversations. And it's actually pretty complex to do. I think over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a lot of hype in this space of this bot live handoff is easy. And it really understanding the right moment in what context to bring in a person and share enough so they don't say, hey, what do you need again? Because it just forgot everything that just happened, is pretty complex, and I think it takes a little bit of focus to design great conversations. This about 12% increase compared to web and apps for booking and getting more women in stores. And so for Sephora, it was a huge, huge success for everyone. And now we power their Google Assistant, and really it's a conversational team. And one thing to take note, if it's a lot of developers in the room, is building a conversation team is something that no organization really is thinking about, and it's a lot of the work goes into how do you design an org to have the right copywriter, to have a product manager built on conversations. A lot of the things we see is the person who was the senior product mobile app manager is becoming the senior messaging manager. And that shift is actually a great shift for the industry, and I think it's going to end up playing out really well, but something that you need to help the brands think about. And then you need, some kind of engineer to be able to pull in all the APIs. And so you need that kind of team and framework. And the biggest challenge is you have 2 different centers that have been competing for years. You have the do not reply email people, the marketers, and you have the service at email people, the support teams that don't really talk to each other, they don't really like each other. And getting them on the same team so that you can actually build stuff together to build one customer experience is a huge challenge. But when it comes from the C-level down, I think that's where it's proven to be really successful. If the CEO of 1-800-Flowers says the future of our business is messaging and voice, then the teams and everyone aligns around that to create a conversation team which allows you to build better experiences. If not, you have a lot of people fighting different channels, 9 Twitter app handles, that whole shithole of the last 10 years was the worst. It was I try to text an airline and there's 9 airline handles. And I'm like, how do I message any airline? And I think to get away from that, we need to bring it all together at an organizational design level, and that's something that we can all help coach. This is one of my favorite demos. I'm actually going to do this live. So when I saw this, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll have CMOs or, people in big companies be like, oh, but no one wants to text us. They all want to call us. And it's really my grandma doesn't even like calling me. She'll literally be like, hey, honey, just text me. It's much easier. She's 84. And they're like, hey, old people don't want to text. I'm like, you're lying. And I think when you see something like this is 1-800-Flowers.
Welcome to 1-800-Flowers.com. If you're calling to place an order, please press 1. To check the status of an existing order, please press 2. Or did you know you can easily and instantly check your order status with our Facebook Messenger chat? Great! Our 1-800-Flowers assistant chatbot just sent you a message, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. Goodbye.
And then my order is tracked to my number. I click one step, it has my order number, and I can actually change, modify, rebuy, and cancel my entire order. 20% of traffic, doop. And the consumer loves it. It's something I didn't even know was possible. And those are the types of experiences that if they're integrated to the systems right, it's designed in a great way. The Facebook Messenger platform allows it. You can do this on other platforms as well, SMS. You'll be able to do it on Apple Business Chat, etc. But it's those types of things are where all of a sudden the consumer expectation shifts. I'll never want to call them again. And now I can interact solely to that brand through one channel. And when it's all tied together and you really do the integrations right, those types of one-step experiences that can decrease a call center in 20% overnight have huge business opportunities for all of us.
Did you know that you...
We don't want to show it again.
Did you know that you can easily and instantly place an order using our Facebook Messenger chatbot? If you would like to order with our bot, please press 3.
We'll just skip that. The right-hand side is now with 1-800-Flowers. I think it's a cool example of, we went through like the hype cycle of chatbots, and it's been great we focused on how do we build a great conversation, and how do we not fail people when they're trying to talk to it we don't understand. How do we build conversations that can actually autocorrect themselves so they're not just scripty tree flows, and we call it random access navigation. That's a big piece of what we've really focused on, is if someone changes their mind, how do we go forward, keep them on the right path, and not fail over with the do not understand problem. And a way to do that is we think of everything like a circle, not like a line. So if you think of, to buy flowers, you have 10 different things you need. We don't care in which order you go or if you change your mind about any of those entities. We're able to update it, move forward, and keep you going forward. Not, sorry, that was a piece of information that looked like a flower type, but you're at the address step, so I actually don't understand what you're talking about. Let's go back to the beginning so that we can really make you pissed. That's the last 2 years of bots, if anyone hasn't known that. This room is probably like, yeah, that sounds about right. But I think if you focus on really designing great conversational experiences, think of it like Google Maps. Point A and point B, it can give you 3 paths that you should maybe go down. But if I take a left as a consumer, the software needs to be good enough to get me back on track to get to point B. If I'm totally outside of the realm of that intent, then maybe I bring in an agent at the right time. But I think getting to that level of conversational experiences is where it's going to start driving this space forward, and not just leaving people in disappointment with like mediocre bots that aren't solving my problem. So a couple other experiences here. I'm going to actually skip this one because we're running back a little behind. So with Hyatt, we decided to say, can you build a better booking experience that has 4 or 5 steps and not like 10 or 12 steps? And, like he said on the advertising side, you're eliminating a login, a password, there's no ads, etc. And then you have this like little flow you're going down. But the biggest piece is that at any time, if you said, actually, what about Tuesday? Or can I actually do Chicago, not New York? The ability to navigate and change your mind is, I think, the big piece that a lot of experiences are missing that really make for a better consumer experience. And so it's just another example of high utility, low friction use cases that I think work really, really well in this space. Instead of what I say, the chatty conversational bots, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to do very simple experiences really well, not really chatty experiences that are just kind of like entertaining me. And that's something that, I think as the development community, we can drive this space forward by reducing friction and saving people time. I'm going to skip these. So the way we've always thought about this since the beginning was, you don't know what systems these big companies are going to use, or even small companies are going to use, whether it's Shopify or Magento, etc. And also, we now support not just Messenger, but Apple Business Chat opened up. Last July, we did a pilot at the Phillies Stadium, and we were actually ordering beer in the stadium, scan a QR code, 2 Bud Lights, Apple Pay, no app download, no install, and the numbers were, numbers that they'd never seen before in digital ordering. And so what we've really taken is, you need to be able to integrate to all these systems. And also, a lot of brands come to us and they're like, hey, we want to use our own NOU. We want to use IBM Watson for our intent. We want to use Dialogflow with Google. We don't want to use your intent engine, et cetera. So taking this integration approach, I think, has been something that really helped us be flexible with the brands. But also, the engine then is a authoring tool that everyone can build conversations without an engineer by plugging in all of these external data sources into the platform. This is the thing I'm probably most excited about. In the web and app world, everyone sat in a room and argued over what the customer wanted. And they took an entire company and they threw it on a website and said, this is everything we do for everyone. Now we're going to personalize it for the next 20 years. In this space, you're actually starting with the intent of the consumer. So you're starting with, what do you want? The consumer tells you. So now every experience is actually just different for everybody. But the biggest thing you get from this is that when the chatbot fails over and says, just a second, we'll get you an agent for that, you start logging this. And there's two types of errors that I think become the future of how businesses run. If you know everything your consumers want that you don't do, because you can finally hear them because they're not a pixel on your website, you can start to make decisions that you couldn't make before because you didn't have machine-readable text from the customer. So every time the chatbot fails over, we have understood, not supported. In this example, the error is we don't sell jerseys in this chatbot, but we understand you're saying jerseys. And that's super powerful to acknowledge what you hear. Hey, we're not selling jerseys just yet, but you can check out our store. So it's understood, but we don't support it. And that's one type of error that I think is really powerful. Here's another example. Can I get some cotton candy? We knew it was food. We don't sell cotton candy yet, but we can get you something else. Acknowledge the error, move forward, and get them back on track. Not understood. So this is one where you see it all the time. Great air design is really powerful, though. This is why you also, I think, you need an agent. An endless air loop that never stops to the consumer is going to piss everyone off and not create a great customer experience. So when you don't understand anything, let's get you over to someone and let's get you to an agent platform. But the best part is that you can sit here and start analyzing all the errors. And no longer are you sitting there and arguing over what you think you should do next. What should we add to the website? What should we add to the app? Where should we go with the digital products? What do our customers actually want? All these questions that you sit in boardrooms and fight over, by sitting there and listening and just by analyzing what people want that you don't do, at an aggregate level, the future, I believe, is you have handled, which is bookings and buy beer and et cetera, and then you have unhandled. And the unhandled becomes the future of your business. Because in the future of really brands, it's not about booking hotel rooms at Hyatt. It's whatever they ask you. And in the future, if they're asking you for, do you have daycare services? Do you do gym and yoga retreats? Do you have any recommendations for like acupuncture that's nearby? I don't know, they might have never thought about that, but now you can actually start to listen at a different level and design brands that the service is the relationship with Hyatt, not the room you book with them. Because if everything's getting commoditized by Amazon, the only thing you have in the future is the relationship. And I don't know about you, but the best medium I've ever found to build relationships personally is messaging. It's personal, it's always there, it remembers everything, and it's how you talk to all your friends. And I truly believe that in the future, great brands will act like great friends. And it's going to be a combination of bots and people in one channel to get you everything you want. Thank you. Now we'll do some questions.
All right, thank you, Shane. So for that example you show 1-800-Flowers where you kind of literally intercepted in the IVR, like how did you get in that loop? Was it sort of like a Twilio type thing, or how do you get there to actually save that time?
So when you call 1-800-Flowers, they're pinging our server. We ping Facebook. Facebook says, we know this phone number or not. If they know this phone number, they know Messenger's on your device. And then we get like a yes/no flag back. At that moment, once you click through the first tree, so you want to buy something, modify your order, edit your order, etc., the second flow is changed to different audio because the flag came back as yes. If no, it goes the same way. And then that's basically how it works.
Great. Is there any time where you say like, hey, listen, you shouldn't be using this bot? You shouldn't make a bot for this use case? Like, what are some times where you found that the right answer is not actually to build a bot?
A lot. I feel like everyone's trying to shove websites into bots, like browsing. People are like, hey, let's browse. And like, there's 17,000 lipsticks at Sephora. Let's not do that. And I don't think it's there yet of browsing. I think it's going to come into the messaging space, those capabilities. But I actually look at it a little differently as, what is something you can do in this space that wasn't possible before? Right now, we're trying to shove everything from the past into the medium. And I think it's usually a combination of a lot of technologies coming together to do things that were never possible. And it's like reducing friction, reducing time. And for me, that comes to, here's an example. United is my favorite bot. And what I see is a lot of people, there was like an airline skill, and an agency built it, and it talked for like 10 minutes. We shouldn't do that bot. One, no one wants to talk to Google Assistant for 10 minutes, ever. And then it always forgets, and it goes off track. But this bot, I said, hey, United, can you check me into my flight? It talked for like 30 seconds about terms and conditions. I didn't even listen to it. But in the past, I would sit at my computer. I would get a check-in email. I'd be like, oh, I should check into this flight. I wouldn't check into the flight. I get an Uber. I go to the airport. I'm like, oh, I didn't check into the flight. Go to the check into the flight. Click on the link. Go to the website. Go to this path. It doesn't have my autofill. Find my confirmation number. Check into the flight. Get my pass. Go to Apple Pay. I'm like, I hate this. Now I say, hey, I do it so one thing I do in the office all the time. Hey, Alexa, check me into my United flight. And it works so amazing. It's like the time when you had a boarding pass on your phone versus printing it. And I'm like, I'll never do it in the past like I did. I'll never do it that way again. But the bot is actually underneath the voice. It's not a conversational design. There's nothing there. It's just solving my problem with one step. And then it's able to talk to all the systems underneath. And so I think a lot of the design right now needs to be like designing voice without voice. What can you do that is anticipating my needs or that simple because it's doing the complexity underneath the experience? And what I see right now is a lot of things that are adding the complexity, just like the web did, onto the conversation, and then you end up in like a 19-step conversational flow that didn't even solve your problem.
All right, great. Thank you. Can you talk more about the conversation style where you're able to change your mind or readjust it? Like, what are some like use case examples where that's actually really handy and saving people time?
Yeah, I mean, in messaging and voice, there's no back button. And so when there's no back button, we're like, what do we do? And when we started about 5 years ago, I always think the constraint drives the innovation. So we were building an agent platform that we were going to build bots on. And my co-founder, Robert, he was the founder of Geek Squad, and then he was the CTO of Best Buy for 10 years. So he watched all these conversations happen across all these Best Buy stores. And he's like, listen, if we don't have the agent failover, we just focus on bots, how will we get the bot back on track? How will we adjust to get people back to the defined intent? And so we set out and we said, okay, if there's a path of 7 steps, and what's different between the history of the internet and today? It's that the consumer's in control. There's a text box. I can change my mind. I can type anything I want. I can literally type something from 4 steps back when I'm asking for location, and I can type, I want dandelions. And you need to be able to understand the entities at every step and the intent that you're in. So we always drew a circle and put a bunch of circles in it instead of a line. And we said, the goal is get from A to B through this circle. You can draw a line of how you think the consumer should get there. But if the consumer changes their mind or says 4 entities at the same time, hey, can I get roses delivered tomorrow to my wife? We can support that because it checks off those 4 boxes, and then we go to the 5th. And now you're turning 10-step flows into 4. And then I'm going from A to D, back to B, to F, change A, and go forward. And then, like in the past, you would be like, don't hit the back button while this thing's going to refresh for 35 seconds. Like, that's so fucked. Like, the whole web is screwed. I hate the web. We should kill it.
So you brought up the circle. So can you explain that metaphor a bit more? Is it because you're essentially going through your list, and until your list is full, you don't escape the circle? Or like, how does that work?
No, because there's no path, right? I have a slide on this. There's no path to go to the goal. So if the goal is book a hotel room, there's 5 things you need. City, number of people, duration, these entities. Entities are under the intent to book a room. And because it's a circle, you're just checking off things you know. And actually, here's a thing that we've learned in designing like better conversational experiences. It's actually about writing copy for what you don't know, not what you do. Because if you know 3 things, then you're like, hey, we still need to know how long you're going to stay. So you're writing copy for the pieces of information you don't know within this flow. But people can navigate that however they want because they can use their language. I do not think the future is marketing ads, going to chatbots and messaging with click buttons that like get them to follow up and spam me again. Like if the future of this space is just the email in a different channel that's not spammed yet and it has higher open rates, then we're fucked. It has to be a better experience. And I think you have to reduce friction, make it simpler, and let the consumer drive the show. And it takes a lot of work. It's very complex to do it well, and you have to really understand conversational design and like NLU type stuff.
So one last question. You had mentioned keeping...
Excuse my language. I know this is your event.
That's okay. The editor will fix that. So for the human handoff part, you mentioned like that's a key part. You don't want to keep going in a loop with the bot not understanding. Does that put things out of reach of a smaller brand that can't be staffed to do that? Or like what are some of your practices and how do you scale that up?
Not at all. I think you should start with a very defined automation experience you want to do. So pick one experience that is high utility, low friction, has a high impact, low effort, and everything else should go to the agent. And so you can start chipping away instead of like, you know, a lot of the AI platforms today walk in, they're like, we're going to do 91% of everything you do in one little swoop, and we're going to plug in our AI engine, and then everything's going to be answered. And I think it's the opposite. You start with, we have a channel where you can talk to us, and then we build an automated experience that people love that does 5%. And then we add another experience that does 9%. And you go from 5 to 9 to 15 to 20. And you actually step your way there by, do people love using the automation? And then you should always, you know, let it kind of go to an agent if needed. We've always had a stance of, we were kind of the bot first company, but we've always had a stance that if we don't know anything you're talking about, we should get you to an agent, and then we should route the context, pass through the variables we already got, let the agent know the 4 things we already know, and like have a good kind of pass back and forth between those two. I think it's actually probably easier for small brands. Big brands have like, you know, 4 different departments using 4 different pieces of software that all are trying to like not integrate with each other.
So is it okay if the agent gets back to you later versus like
Totally.
real time? Okay.
I actually think the future is that, right? So here's the future I see. Hey, like, do you play mandolin?
No, I do not.
No, you do not. That's an air, right? So the air would get logged, and I would say, I asked him, did he play mandolin? And then I shouldn't have to wait for you to respond, though, as a consumer. I would say, go back to the bot. So I would keep talking to the bot, doing other things. Whenever you wanted to respond, that would just come in and say, hey, remember the message you asked 19 messages ago? Here's the answer to that. But in the future, that might happen 9 months later. And you would follow up in 9 months, be like, hey, remember when you asked if you played mandolin? I actually learned mandolin. I have a YouTube channel. I'm a teacher, and this is an amazing video I have of me playing mandolin. Wow, look at this. And I'm like, that's amazing. And I think that's a relationship, because relationships are built on memory. And what you remember is how you build relationships. And this is what no one is really kind of talking about or even really started to explore yet. The power of messaging is that it lasts forever. The message you sent me 3 years ago when we were friends is still sitting there, the message you send me tomorrow. And that opportunity is going to be exploited by marketers in the short term, but I think is the opportunity for the space. I'm actually really bullish on the not ad-supported platforms. Apple Business Chat, WhatsApp, Google Messages, like those platforms in which the relationship is the thing that they're going to really drive, I think has huge opportunity for where this space goes.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Shane.
Well, thank you.